Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 177 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. The end of the month is here, so I want to be sure to shout out my patrons once again. Thank you as always for your continued support to the following: Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lillian Sam Breen, Jesse Clark, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. I want to break up the lesser-known X-Men series as much as I can on the way to the conclusion of this phase of Welcome to Geektown. And fortunately, listener Aiden L. sent in a question that I thought was interesting. He wrote, "Hey Kurt, just was listening to WandaVision again, and I came up with a question. Who are some characters who don't have superpowers in comics?" I'm going to assume you're specifically asking about heroes and villains in superhero comics, since there are a ton of characters in romance comics, horror comics, and biographical stories that don't have any powers, as well as lots of supporting cast members who are important characters despite not having any superhuman abilities. And the short answer to your question is, there are either a whole bunch of them, or very few, depending on your definition. Obviously, anyone with actual powers that stem from their own body is out. So all the mutants, or characters with the metagene in DC Comics, aliens, and people whose bodies were altered by science, gone wrong or gone right, can be eliminated. But from there, the line gets a little blurrier. We have a bunch of technological heroes and villains who, without their costumes and other gadgets, are no better than you or me in a superhero fight. Someone like Tony Stark, even though he may be a
genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
None of those qualities are going to help if Thanos attacks, and he needs his Iron Man suit to hold his own. So, does he have superpowers? I'm going to say yes, because I'm going for the most stringent definition possible. Otherwise, you get so many characters that are quote-unquote powerless that it makes it meaningless. Again, we can get as loose or as strict with our definition of what constitutes a costume/gadget that is special enough to constitute a superpower. I'm going to say basically anything that is unavailable in the real world definitely counts. So Iron Man's repulsor rays, Green Lantern's ring, and even something as low level as the Golden Age Sandman's sleeping gas puts them into the superhuman category. In my opinion, that takes out the character that most people will think of when you ask them to name a non-powered superhero: Batman. He and the rest of his family rely on a bunch of bat gadgets that are still unrealistic given the technology available to us today, especially in the portable size that Batman and the like need in order to carry them around while performing their crime-fighting activities. So we'll take them out of the mix for this question. But hey, a bow and arrow aren't unrealistic gadgets, right? So how about Hawkeye or Green Arrow? Well, normally we could take them out with all of their trick arrows, especially when you have ones with PIM particles in them allowing you to shrink or grow objects that you shoot with that particular projectile. But we can look at periods of time when both characters stuck to standard arrows as their ammunition of choice and still find ways in which they can be classified as super. For instance, let's take this clip from the Avengers as an example.
Hey, Clint.
Hey, man.
Clearly retirement doesn't suit you. You got tired of shooting golf?
Well, I played 18, shot 18. Just can't seem to miss.
I'm inclined to take Clint at his word here. What he's saying is he tried golf, played 18 holes, and scored an 18, which means his first time playing the sport, he got a hole-in-one on every single hole. Professional golfers who dedicate their lives to the game consider themselves incredibly lucky to get a single hole-in-one per game. In fact, no golfer has ever been recorded getting a birdie on every single hole in a game, let alone a hole-in-one. The kind of skill and precision needed to hit the ball every single time with the exact force and aim to land the ball in the hole is something that no human being has. So that definitely places it into the realm of superhuman. And the comic book version of Hawkeye has performed equally impressive feats as well, basically never missing shots that require millimeter precision against moving targets with his chosen weapon. Pro archers could practice a specific shot in order to possibly get to that level of precision, but to do it time after time on his first attempt in a particular circumstance shows that Clint Barton, while he may claim to be just an ordinary guy, is definitely extraordinary. And his DC counterpart, Green Arrow, is similarly blessed, to the point that the Amazons, who are functionally immortal and have decades, if not centuries, to practice the martial arts and skill with a bow and arrow, recognize Oliver Queen as the greatest archer in the world. In fact, in the 1990s, when Chuck Dixon was writing the Green Arrow title, editorial mandate came down telling him to declare Oliver as a metahuman, and showed that even his very first shot with a bow and arrow as a young child was a metaphorical bullseye, taking down a rabbit running away, which was a traumatic experience for the child, explaining why he didn't take up a bow and arrow again until he was trapped on a deserted island, fending for his life. So we've taken the archers out of the equation in our search for non-superpowered heroes. How about Clint's longtime partner, Black Widow? Well, let's put aside her infamous gadgets like the Widow's Bite stingers that can knock basically anyone unconscious. In the comics, Black Widow, not just Natasha, but all of the Black Widows trained in the Russian Red Room, have been given a chemical concoction that allows people to age much more slowly, which is how she could be shown as a young child in World War II, check out Uncanny X-Men number 268, yet still be a young-looking woman in modern times able to fight alongside the rest of the Avengers. At this point, you may be wondering, so are there any non-superpowered characters in Marvel or DC that fight crime on a regular basis? Well, I hate to disappoint, but the answer is probably not. Because here's the thing, even quote-unquote normal humans, who, according to the books, got the way they did through training and dedication, are experts at so many different skills, from martial arts and weapons to detective skills and espionage, that you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who is able to, A, learn all of these things at a professional level, and B, maintain those skills after suffering the damage they do in their adventures. There's a scene in The Dark Knight Rises that sums this up really well.
I have seen worse cartilage in knees.
It's good.
No, that's because there is no cartilage in your knee, and not much of any use in your elbows or your shoulders. Between that and the scar tissue on your kidneys, the residual concussive damage to your brain tissue, and the general scarred over quality of your body, I cannot recommend that you go hella skiing, Mr. Wayne.
Right.
Night after night, these heroes put their bodies through extraordinary stresses, from their superhero landings off of buildings to punching and kicking, and more vitally, being punched and kicked, let alone shot, on a regular basis. All of these characters have been shown at one time or another to have sprained and broken bones, torn cartilage, and other injuries that would at least stop a person temporarily from performing at their peak. And yet, month after month, they recover with no lasting damage. Think of how many football players whose careers have been ended from one injury, in addition to all of the lasting damage we're learning about from CTE. Now imagine if those football players were asked to play games nearly every day, and no off-season either. and that those games were now being played against opponents who are literally trying to kill them. You'd have a hard time convincing me that even the most skilled and luckiest of those players would survive for more than a year. So in order for these characters to continue at their full capacity for as long as most of them have, they need to have some sort of healing factor that allows them to shake off their injuries between adventures with no long-term repercussions. So no, if you really get down to it, there are no normal heroes in the Marvel and DC universe. Even with the sliding timescale saying that these characters have been active for only the past 10 years, the overwhelming majority, if not all of them, should be dead. Or at the very least, broken down arthritic messes. But I'm perfectly okay with that. Superheroes are a fantasy. When writers come along and try to take them realistically, you can get some good stories out of it, but it's not viable long term. A perfect example of this is Dr. Octopus. In 2009, writer Dan Slott and artist John Romita Jr., in issue 600 of Amazing Spider-Man, revealed that Doc Ock had been so severely injured over the years fighting Spider-Man and other heroes that he now had only a year left to live. His body quickly deteriorated, and in the end was only able to save himself by putting his consciousness into Peter Parker's body. This led to the Superior Spider-Man storyline discussed in episode 98, where I discussed the alternate Spider-Man. And that sort of magical or super scientific resolution is where writers have to go to keep these characters viable. Nearly every character in the Marvel and DC universes have had some sort of magical healing applied to them at some point. Whether they died and were resurrected into an unmarred version of their body, like Dr. Octopus did eventually, or simply subjected to the Amazon's purple ray healing energy to remove the detrimental effects of their injuries, like most members of the Justice League. I can't think of any character that isn't currently dead that you can't point to some sort of special recovery solution they've been exposed to at one point or another. So, Aiden, the actual short answer to your question is, there are none. But I hope you enjoyed my longer take on this subject. I know I did. Next episode, I'll likely return to the lesser-known X-Men as I work on wrapping up that feature. But I'm still open to taking new questions and squeezing them into the schedule as I wrap things up on this version of Welcome to Geektown. If you have any questions you'd like to hear me discuss, or general feedback, you can email those at welcometogeektown@gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcometogeektown, Twitter @geektownpodcast, Mastodon @welcometogeektown@mastodon.social, or Blue Sky @welcometogeektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcometogeektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Lovitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips are the copyrighted material, their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.